Hello there, greetings everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here to do the final episode of Hawkwind Part C on exploring the Prog universe. I didn't really actually intend on this being a three-part series, but their discography is so lengthy and there's so much things going on that I just felt like I didn't want to try to throw this all together. It would have been like an hour and a half video, which is kind of ridiculous. So tried to cut it down to three parts. And if you like Hawkwind, you'll watch it. If you don't like Hawkwind, maybe you won't watch it. But easier to watch something that's in three parts, I think, than watch something that's so lengthy. I don't mind some lengthy videos. It depends on the topics, though. Anyways, for this topic, Hawkwind, which is the band we've done now. I've done this of Part C, like I said. I did have them in the most recent mini-series as well, which featured those bands that I think should have been bigger. They were one of the episodes. Actually, they've been the most viewed episode of the six, which was quite a little bit surprising to me. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied here. So, actually, I think I'm going to grab a water because even though my hack is kind of gone, whenever you're talking a lot, it tends to come back. So, the first album that we're going to do takes place in 2006, September 4th, 2006 to be exact, featuring Brock, Davey, Chadwick, and then you have some people from the past, Calvert, House, Arthur Brown, Lemmy, because they did do some remix tracks for this album from their 70s discography. So there's a little bit of that on this album as well as the newer tracks as well. A lot of vocal narratives on this album, or narrations, I guess. They tend to have done a lot more of that towards the end of their career, where they have somebody talking and it's always somebody. It's not always the same person. Sometimes it's different people. But on this particular album, I believe it's all Dave Brock. This has got some heavy riffing on it as well. It's a pretty standard Hawkwind album. I don't think it's by any means anything unusual. Like, there's nothing unusual going on here. If you like that early 70s stuff and you followed them throughout their the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, they've had different styles at times on different albums, but this one is a pretty basic sounding Hawkwind album. You know, the things that we've come to expect, that heavy guitar riffing, spacey sound, some psychedelic stuff on here, maybe a little blues but not too much, an occasional punk sound as well, but no punk on this album. Pretty much just that heavy spacey rock sound that you normally think of when you think of Hawkwind. So the next album out, which I'm going to flip to, is Blood of Earth. Okay, so this album came out in 2010, so about a 4-year gap here between their studio albums, although they did do some live stuff in that time period as well. This is their 26th studio album at this point, and this is back in 2010. Some bands are getting to like 24 now, like 10 years, 15 years later. But Hawkwind were very proficient, as most people know. So this album was released June the 21st, 2010. Again, Brock. You got Null Howe on here as well with guitar, bass, and keyboards. I'm not familiar with this guy. I don't even know if I've got his name right. So if somebody knows who it is, please let me know. I may have just spelled it wrong. That's probably what it is. Mr. Dibbs is on here, bass and vocals. Tim Blake on keyboards. Chadwick back, and Matthew Wright here on vocals too. So you got a little bit of a different group of people here. So it's like they did a fair number of albums with the previous amount of people, and now they've kind of switched out here. And you also have Jason Stewart here on keyboard and John Sevick on violin, and that's the live part though. Okay, so you've got some more competitive narratives here, or commentative narratives, I guess is the better word. Narration, I guess, is the best way to put it, where they just talking. They're kind of telling a story while the music's going at the same time. Another very spacey album. This album's a little bit more emotionally charged at times. There's a little bit of a solemn feel to some parts of the album as well. So they've kind of mostly stuck with the classic Hawkwind sound, but there are some different narratives as well here. It's a pretty solid album. Most of their albums are medium range, pretty solid. This one released again on June the 21st, 2010. The next album out I actually own, but, actually maybe I do. Oh, here it is, sorry. I couldn't find it earlier. It wasn't where it was supposed to be, and that's because I got it in the wrong spot. And I might have a bit of time getting it out of here, so let's see if it's going to come out. And probably, there it is. Look at that, it's going to come out. Anyways, I looked for it before the video started, and I couldn't find it. So it's this one, Onward. I bought this, I don't know, maybe late last summer. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at my videos to figure it out. It's a pretty solid album. Very representative, I think, of the Hawkwind light stuff. You know, this is a little bit of that going on here. So this is Hawkwind Light. I think it's just titled Hawkwind here, but I think originally it was Hawkwind Light. I could be wrong. So you got Brock, Chadwick, Blake, Dibbs, Howe, Stewart, and Langton here as well. Very spacey, almost symphonic sounding. This one is much more spacey sounding than the predecessors, at least 3 or 4, and for at least going back a fair distance here. A lot more that symphonic spacey sound that a lot of bands at this time period are kind of known for. It's around the time when people all wanted to be synthesizer experts, and so yeah, so there's a lot of that here. But this is not a bad album. In this case, it comes with 2 discs. So it is you got one, and then you got the second one here. Pretty strong album. I don't know, maybe somebody out there knows. I didn't see anything that told me whether this was originally a 2-disc album or the second disc was added with a remix. That I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't think it is, though. I think this is one album that's a double album. Anyways, this originally was a Hawkwind Light album, but is now just a Hawkwind album. Pretty solid album, though. I think it's good. I love this. This is one of the ones who I like the back part quite a bit. It's almost apocalyptic looking, with all those buildings and crushed parts down at the bottom, and it looks like it was after a war or something. The next album up is called The Machine Shop. This was released in 2016. So now you've got like only 4 studio albums over a 10-year period. That's like an eternity for these guys. So this one's their 28th studio album, released April 15th, 2016. Brock, Chadwick, Dibbs, Howe, I believe it's Howe. Boy, my spelling is bad, man. And Deerfield is on here playing keyboards. And then you have Wheaton on bass as well. Lots of kind of electronic stuff going on here. So with the Onward album, they kind of started that. This one is a continuation of that. This is more of a concept album as well. It has that concept feel, but it does have some psychedelic and Indian sounds, which is something that I've only heard maybe once or twice in their discography, and there's a little bit of that going on here. It's got some more of that narrative stuff or narration going on. very spacey, you know, almost that kind of what we picture in science fiction is that void sound, even though there's no sound in a void, but the sound that they make for dramatic purposes is going on here on this album too. So yeah, they've picked up a lot more of that kind of electronic sound to their music on this album. So they've kind of slowed down up till this point. They'd only produced like 4 albums in a 10-year period, plus some live stuff and other stuff and touring and stuff that they were doing. But it starts to pick up now. This is the beginning of that pickup period. So the next album is Into the Woods, released in 2017, May the 5th. This is a strong album. I really like this album quite a bit. You got Dibbs, Wheaton, Chadwick, Brock, and Magnus Martin on here playing keyboards and guitars as well. Some pretty heavy piano parts going on here on this album. Lots of acoustic parts as well. More acoustic stuff than I normally think of when I think of Hawkwind, for sure. It's a very clear sounding album, and the narratives there's lots of narratives, but they're pretty clear sounding as well. And I find this album has a little bit of those quirky lyrics that they start to develop. Well, they've had quirky lyrics at times throughout their history, but it gets a little bit more predominant now in this last section of albums. So from 2016 to 2024, they release an album every year. And a lot of bands don't do that, even back in the 70s, but they're still doing it. This is a pretty solid album, though. One of the more ones I like a little bit more on their later part of their discography. That was their 30th studio album too. So their 31st studio album is The Road to Utopia, released September 14th, 2018. Brock, Magnus Martin, who does a little bit of viola here as well. Hahn, I think it's Hahn actually. My W's and my N's sometimes look the same, but I think it's Hahn. Chadwick, Wheaton, and Mr. Dibb as well. This is a decent album, lots of interesting sounds, but very, very much part of that kind of electronic Hawkwind sound. So you get your traditional Hawkwind sound going on, but you have a lot more of this electronic stuff going on as well. The next album out, 2019, All Aboard the Skylark. I think it's Skycork or Skylark. I think it's Skylark. October the 25th, 2019. Again, Brock, Martin, Hone, Chadwick, and Michael. There's a little bit of that sax. There's a little bit of sax going on here. And Wheaton is also on this album, and Dibbs as well. I forgot about him. So Michael's Song, that's who I was trying to say. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Song, song. Playing some sax here on this album. This is a pretty solid album too. Definitely well within the norms for Hawkwind. A little bit electronic stuff, but a little bit more different sounds too, with use of the sax and stuff like that. It's not something that's commonly used by them, but I like the album. I think it's pretty solid. The next album out is Carnivorous, released in 2020. So from 2020, they did miss 1 year, 2022, but 2020 released this album October the 16th. Actually, it was released October the 16th, 2020. I wrote 2019, but I know it's 2020. The other one was 2019. Again, Brock, Chadwick, Martin, all on this album. This is kind of a poppy album because I think originally it was another one of those Hawkwind light orchestra. I think that's what they're called, Hawkwind light orchestra albums. Kind of a poppy album. Dave Brock doing the vocals here. The solos are fairly involved and intense, but overall I find this to be much more poppy than a lot of their stuff. And so I think that's originally it was supposed to be a Hawkwind light album, but when they redid the albums, I guess they put this one in as a Hawkwind album. Then we have Somnia, which came out in 2021, September 10th, 2021. I think this is like the third album of theirs that came out on September 10th, which is significant to me because that's my daughter's birthday. This is a very clear sounding, great production on this album. Some quiet, almost bluesy moments at times on this album as well. It does have its spacey, psychedelic sound to it as well, but I think that there's a little bit of that difference. They're doing a little bit different, and the album is much clearer than I'm used to. Usually I find Hawkwind a bit murky at times. Cloudy, I guess, maybe another thing, or the other term is like grindy. That's another term that would apply to their music. The next album out came out 2 years after that, last year actually. The Future Never Was, released April the 28th, 2023. Brock Chadwick, Davey McKinnon here on bass, and Paul Sandra on keyboards and synthesizers, and you've got some piano parts in here as well. Martin is also on this album. Very spacey, heavy album. There's a song that they do a narrative. Well, it's not really a narrative. It's basically they've recorded a part that Aldous Huxley was giving a kind of a lecture, I guess, and they kind of recorded it into the music. So, yeah, pretty normal Hawkwind album. Very, very spacey, very psychedelic. Lots of heaviness to it. So, actually, this album and the one that came out this year, they sound the most like their kind of 70s, early 70s style stuff. Anyways, I like this album quite a bit. So I'm just going to flip here to the notes I made on the newest album, because I did do a show on this. I'm not going to talk too much about this, because if you want to see this, you can go and see the What's New Hawkwind Stories from Time and Space. So this album, again, lots of symphonic stuff, but yeah, like symphonic, but and dominated by that, but definitely lots of heavy guitar, very spacey, all those kind of like phasers on stun noises going on all over the place. Really strong, heavy Hawkwind album. Very not totally different from their early albums, like from the early 70s. This is like one of the better albums that they put out. In fact, this one and the one that came out in 2023 are two of the ones that I like quite a bit. I think that if I was gonna go out and buy Hawkwind albums, if I made up my mind to do that today, this one and that one would be the two that I would get first. Yeah, lots of like, they even have some noise effects like they normally used to do in those days, all kinds of like wind and different types of noises, quirky noises and stuff like that. Yeah, really strong, very strong album. And the thing about Hawkwind is they're still going. They're still making their live stuff is pretty good as well. They've got like a horde of live albums. So if you're a person that likes their bands live, there are a lot of Hawkwind live albums to choose from. I may actually do an episode one time on just their live stuff. I'm not sure what I would do with it, but I don't think I would do it here on this particular show, but maybe I'll do something when I do a live experience. I may do like a whole series of talks about their different live albums, but until then, this will have to be it for Hawkwind. Yeah, lots of discography. Like you'll never run out of music to listen to with Hawkwind. And Dave Brock, of course, has been there on every single album, all the Hawkwind light orchestra stuff, all of the Hawk Lords, all of the Church of Hawkwind, all that stuff. He's on all of that stuff. And it's pretty consistent, for such a lengthy discography. And I think I got like 35 I think there's 35 albums or 36 now. And there's not a huge difference in a lot of them. Yeah, some of them are heavier, some of them are lighter, some of them are a little more poppy, some of them a little more punky, some of them maybe a little bit more psychedelic, but they all have that Hawkwind sound. There's that sound permeates the album. Sometimes I think it appears to be what they do is, He'll write whatever amount of songs he's going to put on the album, and he'll have the normal Hawkwind sound interspaced throughout the album, and then the quirky stuff he'll fill it in all different places, so you get a kind of a continuity. Anyways, this is an excellent band, a band I like a lot, and I know that there's enough people out here who really like Hawkwind too. So I only have, at this present day, I've only got 3 albums, but trust me, when things start going better financially, I will pile those albums in there because I like a lot of their stuff. So I want to thank you for tuning in and watching this episode. This is Hawkwind Part C. Please like and subscribe if you don't mind. That would be great for me. Sorry, I'm a little bit my head's a little clogged today. I'm not really sure why, so it's a hard time putting my words together here, and I do apologize for that. But don't forget to hit the like and the notification, and hit the comment section if you have anything to say about Hawkwind. I always enjoy people's comments because often people will make comments about the group that isn't something that's regularly a regular known fact, or something, or something that's regularly known about them. And you can't trust anything on Wikipedia, really. You can't. So, most people, there are people who love to read and who read their own band, the bands they like, and they know all the stuff. And those are the type of people that interest me to write in and say something about. Anyways, don't forget to hit the notification bell, and we will be back in 2 weeks with metal, which I'm going to be featuring Black Sabbath. I hope you can come for that. It'll be only 1 episode, though. I think Black Sabbath got 15 albums, I believe, and I own every one of them except for the 4 Tony Martin albums. And it's not because I have any problem with those albums. I just never see them when I'm out. So anyways, take care and have yourself a good day. Goodbye.